Every time I hang out with a new group of people and I happen to mention that I'm a personal finance coach, I almost always get asked, which is the best piece of money advice that you can give, and how has that advice changed your life? Well, it's hard to pinpoint one piece of financial advice or one piece of money advice that applies to everyone, because people are in different financial situations and different financial life cycles. For example, someone who is currently living paycheck to paycheck will need to make different financial choices as compared to somebody who already has multiple streams of income, or someone who has a sufficient emergency fund and is a high income earner. But since I've done my fair share of research, I hear different money stories from my financial coaching clients every day. I have made financial progress by attaining debt freedom, and because I have money conversations on a daily basis, I have narrowed down 3 pieces of advice that I not only believe can apply to everyone, but also can be applicable to any type of financial goal. My name is Agatha from the Wealth Tribe, and this is where we learn how to build wealth together. Welcome to another episode of Wealth Wednesdays, and if you're new here, welcome to the Wealth Tribe. I'm happy to have you here. And now let's dive into the best money advice I can give, the 3 pieces of money advice I can give to any young adults. Piece of advice number 1, analyze your purchases based on cost per use. Let me ask you, if you own a pair of shoes that you bought for $100 and a designer bag that you bought for $500, which one is the cheaper purchase? Which one do you think is a cheaper purchase? At first glance, it seems that the shoes were the cheaper purchase. But if ever since you bought this pair of shoes, if you've only worn them once, it means that the cost per use of that pair of shoes is $100. But if we look at the designer bag, if for example you take that designer bag to work every single day, then the cost per use for that designer bag is $16. The handbag is a cheaper and more valuable purchase if you apply the cost per use formula. What is the cost per use formula? A great way to know what brings you the most value so you don't waste money is applying the cost per use formula. Simply divide the total cost of the item by the frequency you'll use it. For example, if you buy a 1,500 laptop and use it every day for 1 year, the cost per use is $4.12. That is $1,500 divided by 365 days. If you use this laptop every day for another 1 year, the cost per use goes down to $2.05. By applying the cost per use formula before making any purchase, you realize that the value of any item is directly related to how much use you get out of the purchase. Using the cost per use formula to analyze each of your purchases has several advantages. Advantage number 1, it empowers you to decide which is a valuable purchase and which one is not. For example, I could go on and on about which items you should cut from your monthly budget in order for you to save more money, or which budgeting categories, or where you should spend less in your budgeting categories in order to attain financial freedom faster. But at the end of the day, it's your money. It's your life. You're the best suited person to decide whether something is valuable or not. You're also the best suited person to decide how many times you're actually going to use an item every time you're about to purchase it. And at the end of the day, again, you're the best suited person to decide if the item that you're about to buy or the items that you own are important to your specific lifestyle. Advantage number 2, you get to hold yourself accountable. Your favorite personal finance YouTuber, aka me, will not always be lurking at your back to remind you again that you don't need an extra pair of shoes or an extra pair of jeans. Before hitting that checkout button, do the cost per use math and ask yourself, how much value will I get out of this item? How much value will this item actually give based on the specific lifestyle that I'm actually living right now, and not the lifestyle that I aspire to have. Advantage number 3, you get to be more intentional with your spending. The other day when I was shopping with my friends, I overheard one of them whispering to another, that the first thing she checks is the fabric and the stitching. And yeah, it's true, I'm that girl. I'm the type of person who always checks the type of stitching, the quality of stitching in a garment before I buy, and the quality of the fabric. Every time I go out shopping for clothes, I always buy clothes based on the quality of fabric and stitching. And one of the advantages of doing this is that you end up with I have ended up with clothes that make me feel both comfortable and confident. And another thing I always do when I'm buying clothing is that I always read the care labels. You know, those labels are usually at the back of your clothing and usually at the seams. Yes, I always read those care labels because it's always important to know before you buy this garment, do I actually have the capacity to take care of this garment? Because some garments, for example, are always written do not hand wash. So if you buy a garment that is written do not hand wash, and it means that you have to dry clean it, and you cannot afford dry cleaning, then it becomes something that is unaffordable to you or that you cannot maintain. And worse still is that if you end up hand washing this garment, it means that you have a garment that looks distorted, or a garment that have whose lining is hanging, which, let's be honest, it's one of my greatest pet peeves. For the cost per use formula to work to your advantage over the long term, take care of your belongings. For example, if a coat is written that it should be taken care by dry cleaning, take it to dry cleaning. And one of the other things that I don't do when it comes to clothing, I don't always buy something just because it's trendy, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, most of these things that are trendy, or most of these clothes and shoes that are trendy, are made up of terrible fabric and are made up of and the stitching is done wrong. And at this point, can we take a moment and talk about the terrible thing that is fast fashion? And what is fast fashion? Fast fashion means that the brands produce in countries where labor is very cheap because the laws don't protect the garment workers. The clothes produced are of poor quality and execution, and they get sold at incredibly cheap prices in rich countries. Since they are trendy in design, they will get out of fashion quite quickly. In fact, fast fashion brands even release new collection every 2 weeks to make clothes previously purchased obsolete. Buying many low quality and inexpensive items usually means that this cost will add up, and therefore at the end of the day, this will delay your financial freedom journey. And the other bad thing at buying very many low quality and inexpensive items is at the end of the day, it leads to a lot of debt. And that is what happened to me a few years back, and I shared that story here. The reason why you'll end up in debt by buying if you buy many inexpensive and cheap quality items is that these items always need to be replaced. They need to be replaced every month, every 2 months, every 3 months. And if you keep replacing items, if you keep replacing furniture, if you keep replacing clothes and shoes every 3 months or every 2 months, it means that all this money should have gone to your savings account or investing accounts, and therefore this means that you're delaying your financial freedom journey. And analyzing, and another advantage of using the cost per use formula is that using it to analyze each of your purchases puts you in a position where you're able to finally afford investment pieces. For example, I have an 100% leather tote bag that fits my laptop and everything that a girl needs when she's going somewhere. And this 100% leather tote bag, of course, it cost me a lot of money. It cost me around $150. I love it. It has served me for the last 3 years. It has never broken down. It has never failed me, and I get a lot of compliments for it. So you see, for me, I had to save in order for you. I had to save and stop buying cheap handbags in order for me to eventually be able to afford that kind of handbag. And I'm also the kind of person who will go to a mall to run just one errand, and I'll come back home, just run just that one errand without having gone into another shop and done any impulse purchase, because I am always applying the cost per use formula. I'm always thinking, is this valuable? Does this serve my current lifestyle? How many times am I going to actually use this item? And I use that to tell myself, no, I'm not going to use to buy this thing. It's the best way to stop your impulse buying habit. Buying stuff on a whim always ends up to you wondering, where did my money go at mid-month? By applying the cost per use formula to analyze each of your purchases, then you get an opportunity to step back and ask yourself, how many times do I actually foresee myself using this item? How much value will I actually get from this item? And if you're wondering, how do I actually start being conscious about the cost per use formula? How do I actually start plan for cost per use, one of the best ways is, of course, having a budget. Having a budget is a non-negotiable thing in your financial freedom journey, because having a budget helps you to be deliberate about each of your purchases, as opposed to buying every item on a whim, especially big ticket items such as a car or a piece of furniture. And at the end of the day, always remember that one of the things that is an issue when it comes to our financial freedom journey is the amount of ads and sales messages that are always there when we are scrolling social media or even in our mailbox. And therefore, if you do not have a budget and if you do not plan for these purchases, then at the end of the day, you end up being a victim of these sales messages. Budgeting, having a budget and having a sinking fund, and a sinking fund is an account, it's a savings account that you set up to save money to actually spend. For example, saving money for a vacation, saving money to buy a car, saving money to buy a piece of furniture. So having a budget and having a sinking fund is the best way to be able to plan for your best life and to be able to afford the best quality of items that you can afford. And at the end of the day, don't you think it's awesome for you to always know ahead of time how much money you need to buy an X item, so that at the end of the day, when you go home with that item, you don't feel guilty about it? How about we aspire to removing the guilt out of each purchase by actually applying the cost per use formula? And at the end of the day, I learned from Chelsea Fagan that if you have to replace a less expensive item more often, chances are that you'll end up spending more overall. And then advantage number 4 of using the cost per use formula is that it makes decluttering easier. By applying the cost per use formula, it will help you while you're doing decluttering, either every quarter or at the end of every month. It helps you declutter in that when you hold an item, you get to ask yourself, should I keep it or should I get rid of it? The one thing that is going to help you decide and make peace with whether you should keep it or get rid of it is the cost per use formula, because you'll be able to ask yourself, how many times have I actually used this item in the past, and how many times do I actually foresee myself using this item in the future? If the answer is, especially if it's an expensive item that you've been having in your house that have been taking up space, or something, an expensive item, I see a lot of people that have expensive items in their houses that they bought for an aspirational lifestyle, the lifestyle that you fantasize about in your head, and so instead of having that aspirational item that could have been money again, and that is gathering dust in your house while decluttering, just ask yourself, how much value have I gotten out of this item, and how much value do I foresee myself getting out of this item? If you know, and be honest with yourself, because that's one of the other things that we talked about earlier, that you are the only person who can decide whether an item is valuable or not, then you get to get rid of it. And when you get rid of as many items as possible that don't give value, then you get to only be left with, or you get to be left with only items that help you live your best life, and again, you're the only person who can decide what is your best life. And the cost per use formula, I love the cost per use formula again because it has helped me think of each of my purchases as investments. You just don't walk into a mall, you just don't walk into a shop and spend your money and get out of that place with an item that is not going to give you value. Think of each item, you should also start thinking of each item that you purchase as an investment. And this is again where we start thinking about quantity versus quality. Again, as opposed to buying many inexpensive items, it's better to put that money aside and buy an investment piece that helps you live your best life. I'm aware that not everything fits into the cost per use formula. For example, there are items that are one use or a one-time use items, such as a ticket, a flight ticket to a vacation or a flight ticket to see a loved one. So yes, not everything fits in the cost per use formula, but I can guarantee you most of the items that you buy in your house, in your office, anywhere that you live, you can use the cost per use formula and to declutter and to get rid of things that in your house that have no value. Now let's talk about how to apply the cost per use formula. Practically, how do you apply the cost per use formula? Number 1, when buying big ticket items such as electronics or cars. Let's go back to the example we used at the beginning of this video when we talked about the $1,500 laptop. A $1,500 laptop, for example, is usually a fast, efficient machine. At least I can say that for the MacBook that I use. It's a fast and efficient machine, and it's a machine that is designed to last 8 years with no repairs. And so far I've used mine for 2 years and I've never had an issue with it. Well, and when we did the math in the beginning of this video, we also saw we use that item for 2 years, every day for 2 years, then the cost per use of such a laptop goes down to $2.05. Let's compare that to a slow $500 laptop. What happens is that for a slow $500 laptop, it means that you have to replace that item every 2 years. And therefore, that means that the total at the end of the 2 years for you to own a computer is going to add up being $2,000. And this is without including the repairs and the time wasted looking for somebody to repair this this laptop and also to deliver it to where it's going to be repaired, and the amount of time you have to wait for that guy to repair that laptop. Because let's be honest, sometimes you deliver that laptop and they're going to give it back to you after 2 weeks. Way number 2 that you can apply the cost per use formula is good quality clothes. Most of the time when it comes to clothes, you get what you pay for. And I'm not going to talk more about this because I already talked about it in the previous point. That way that you can apply the cost per use formula is, well, buying furniture, and again here you get what you pay for. And yes, I know and I like the fact that you can thrift good quality items at any price range, which ends up being very good for our environment anyway. And because I know I have thousands of smart wealth tribers out there, I can't forget to mention that, of course, being able to pay for best quality investment pieces or buying items in bulk is a financial privilege. Having to buy the many low quality items keeps a lot of us stuck in poverty, which is a concept that was best illustrated by economist Terry Pratchett in this quote. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Angmopok on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that would still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and still have wet feet. This was Captain Vine's boots theory of socio-economic unfairness. That brings to a close money advice number 1 about the cost per use formula. Now let's dive into the second money advice, which is understanding the game you're playing. I learned this lesson from one of my favorite personal finance books, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, where he writes, being swayed by people playing a different game can also throw off how you think you're supposed to spend your money. So much consumer spending, particularly in developed countries, is socially driven, subtly influenced by people you admire and done because you certainly want people to admire you. But while we can see how much money other people spend on cars, homes, clothes, and vacations, we don't get to see their goals, worries, and aspirations. A young lawyer aiming to be a partner at a prestigious law firm might need to maintain an appearance that I, a writer, can work in sweatpants have no need for. But when his purchases set my own expectations, I'm wandering down a path of potential disappointment because I'm spending the money without the career boost he's getting. We might not even have different styles. We're just playing a different game. It took me years to figure this out. A takeaway here is that few things matter more with money than understanding your own time horizon and not being persuaded by the actions and behaviors of the other people playing different games than you are. And this advice isn't just applicable when it comes to vacations, when it comes to the vacations we're going to, when it comes to the cars, clothes, and houses that they are buying. It's also applicable to when it comes to our investment choices. And I always say that you just don't wake up one day and decide to buy a house, to invest in a bond, to buy a stock just because other people are investing in it, or just because you had a lot of people are making money in it, or because of the fear of missing out. You actually get to decide what you're going to invest in based on your financial goals and based on the game that you're playing. So it's very, very important to not do things simply because you have the fear of missing out. Advice number 3. Financial advice or money advice number 3 is about how long can you actually stick around. This is one of the most important pieces of financial advice that I received, and I still use up to date. He says that cockroaches aren't cuddly. He shared that cockroaches aren't cuddly, but they do 2 things that we also want out of our portfolios. Number 1, they're really hard to kill, and number 2, they compound fast. When it comes to your investment choices, the ability to stick around for a very long time without being wiped out by either an emergency or something completely out of our radar, such as a recession or COVID-19, or giving up, is something that is very, very important, or rather it's what makes the biggest difference in terms of how fast your money is going to compound. Crafting your investment portfolio in a way that you can stick around for the longest time should be the cornerstone of your strategy, whether it's investing or how you run your business. You have to position yourself to be financially resilient for whatever comes your way. And if you're wondering how you can position your investment portfolio to be resilient, watch this video. It will either be here or here. Which is the best money advice that you have ever received, or which of these 3 financial advice that I've shared are you actually going to implement? Tell us in the comment section.